Great to have everybody on today. We're going to talk about cruelty and bullying today in our Meet the Author series. And today is July 24th, 2021. You can see on your screen there my contact info. Anybody wants to get in touch with me, questions and so forth after the session. Of course, in the Q&A, the live people can ask questions. But if people are watching the recording and you have questions, feel free to reach out to me on my website there on the contact page and send me an email and whatever. And we can discuss any issues, questions that may have come up after you watch this recording. So great to have everybody on. We do this monthly series and it's free. You can, if you want to get an email from me with the future sessions and the titles and all that, just shoot me a message on that website and I'll add you to the email list. Just so you know, the next one we're going to talk about is in August 21st, same time at 10 o'clock Pacific time, my time, here in Los Angeles, 1 o'clock on the East Coast. And what is it, 7 o'clock in South Africa, where you are, Christina, I think, in the evening. But August 21st, Saturday, the next topic is going to be on spiritual insecurity, the meaning of life, and the idea of perfection. So those three concepts actually go together, and they may not sound like they go together to you initially, but I'm going to show you how they kind of weave together. Spiritual insecurity, the meaning of life, and perfection on August 21st, Saturday. And there are several essays in this book, which we're obviously talking about in this series, on those several topics that I just mentioned that we're going to talk about in the next session in August. Today, we're going to talk about transcending cruelty and the idea of bullying. And there's another idea in here in the book, this is a collection, those of you who don't know about my book, just very quickly, it's a collection of 67 essays that I've written over the last several years. And they're on all different topics. And if you look at the table of contents, some of them you'll see cruelty and bullying. You'll see how to transcend cruelty, how to deal with it, and so forth. The nuances of forgiveness. We did a previous session already in this series on forgiveness, and if you haven't seen that one, you can find it on my YouTube channel. And we also did a previous session already on love, and love, the idea of love and unconditional love, and so forth. But there are 67 essays on a wide variety of topics that help us live life more fully now in the present where we are, obviously. There's a chapter on emotions, on life principles. There's a chapter on meditation and a chapter on spiritual ideas, which we'll obviously get into in this series little by little each month. Okay, so very practical tips, very short essays, a page and a half, 2-3 pages long, very easy to read. When you're reading the book, by the way, I suggest, most people have told me that this tends to work for them, so I've been passing this tip along from them, the other readers, to you, that to read look at the table of contents and see what jumps out at you, which topics jump out at you, and read that essay. So it's not the kind of book that some people will read it cover to cover, but it's a reference book, it's a guidebook. And today we're going to be talking about this idea of cruelty and where does it come from? Why are people cruel? Why do they bully? And what can we do about it? So we're going to cover some very practical points here, but I think understanding why people bully, why are people cruel, it helps us actually on a very practical level figure out ways in our own way. Each of us is unique. Each of our situations is going to be unique. And some of you may have been bullied and been treated in a cruel way already in your lives. And my heart goes out to you. It's not a pleasant experience. I've been through it myself. And I'll tell you, some stories, personal stories and so forth in today's discussion. But it made me think about it, when I went through it. And I'm like, why do people do that? And how do you deal with it? Because we very often feel helpless when we're in that kind of bullying situation. First, let's just define cruelty, okay? And then I'm going to take this PowerPoint slide off here, because this is the only PowerPoint slide I have in the PowerPoint presentation. And I'll just go on Spotlight and you'll see me talking rather than the little square of me right now. So I looked up cruelty in Wikipedia, and it actually fits with the definition that I've been using in terms of cruelty. And it's the idea of inflicting pleasure to cause suffering on other people. You get pleasure out of causing suffering. That's the idea. So you get some sort of happiness and pleasure out of making other people feel badly, causing them suffering, inflicting pain on other people. It's a very, it's weird when you're not a cruel person to see people acting cruelly. And very often, in my life anyway, and probably in many of your lives as well, you've scratched your head when you don't see yourself as a cruel person. I'm going to give you some examples of where I've been cruel too, and we need to watch out for this. But if you're not generally wired that way, and you're generally a nice person, you generally kind of look at these cruel situations and you see somebody acting cruelly and go, why would they do that? But that's the quick definition of cruelty you see there. And there's a longer definition there in Wikipedia, which I'm not going to get into. But basically, I just used that short definition of where somebody gets pleasure out of inflicting pain or suffering on somebody else. That's it. Okay. So again, this quick slide on this slide, many of you know that I've written 2 books and so forth. Those are the 2 books, etc. And they're available on all the online booksellers worldwide. They're not just available on Amazon. They're available throughout the world on other Barnes and Nobles and, all kinds of booksellers in various countries around the world now. So again, I'm going to go off of, I'm going to stop sharing, stop share. All right. So hopefully I am still on, let's see. I'm on Spotlight. Good. Okay, good. So let's talk about this idea of cruelty a little bit more. And just quick disclaimer right at the outset. When I'm talking about bullying, I want you to understand that none of what we're going to talk about today is meant to absolve or give the bully any free pass to do what they're doing. All right? So I just want to say that, because I'm going to talk about this from the bully standpoint too. All right? The victim and the bully, from both of those perspectives. So I just want you to understand that I am not giving a hall pass to the bully. They are responsible for their actions and the consequences of their actions. So that's a given, all right? They're always responsible. But I think that if we get a little bit better understanding about why people bully, that helps inform us about what we can do about it if, in the event, like I told you, I've been bullied before, what you can do about it, all right? How can we neutralize their bad behavior as much as possible without promoting it? Because very often you'll see, as we go through this analysis, we may promote their bad behavior without even realizing it, okay? So again, when I'm talking about bullying and this kind of bad behavior, it could fall into a lot of different categories of everyday, unfortunately, for some people, everyday behavior, or things that at least we've heard about every day. Not that each of us is, involved in this type of behavior, but we hear about it all the time. Turn on the news, unfortunately. I try to watch less news. As this 24/7 news cycle has increased, I watch less of it, and it keeps me less stressed out by not being exposed to all the silly, crazy stuff that they show you on the 24/7 news. But, what racial stereotypes, ethnic slurs, religious wars, even office politics, this to me all falls into this general category of bullying. So bullying is not just an individual thing. Of course it is. And it is to the victim. It's very personal and individual. But I'm saying there's cultural bullying going on, and racial bullying amongst cultures. And there are religious wars going on in the world as we know today. Those are all forms of bullying in my book. All right. So we're going to talk about, as I already introduced to you, these two topics, but I just want to highlight them at the beginning of our talk today. We're going to talk about transcending cruelty, and we're going to talk about the importance of being important. So these are two concepts that I talk about in several of the essays in my book here. But those two concepts may be, I think, going forward, maybe give people a new framework to think about, because that's what I do. Those of you guys have been in some of my classes, that's what I do. I try to give people a different approach, maybe a different perspective to think about things. And by thinking about things maybe a little bit differently than the way we've normally been thinking about it, not just individually, personally, but societally and culturally and so forth around the world, maybe it'll give us each some insights into how to chip away at some of these long-standing, we'll call them bad behaviors that the human race has been involved in for millennia, a long time, many, many years. Okay. So as we said, defining cruelty in the similar way that cruelty is defined in that Wikipedia page I showed you earlier. Cruelty is when someone enjoys inflicting pain or unhappiness on another person, or persons, could be plural. Okay. And this could be physical or emotional pain. It doesn't always have to be one or the other. It could be either or both sometimes. But here's the ironic thing, and I think we don't always realize this. Why do you and I do anything in life? Why do we do what we do? Whether we do take care of our family, in our loved ones, or even jobs that we do, even jobs that we don't like. we just go, I gotta go punch the clock, but we do things out of a pursuit of happiness. And you may say, well, I don't even like my job, but you're doing it for a larger goal, a pursuit of happiness. To what? To put money in your pocket so you can buy food and so forth, and keep a roof over your head, and etc. Buy clothes, the basic fundamentals. I'm talking about basics. People who have like stupid amounts of money, I get it. They can buy all kinds of unnecessary things. But let's just talk about the basics. Those things are there to help us pursue our own happiness, because it's going to make us a heck of a lot happier having a roof over our head and food on our table. Okay, I get it. Along the way, maybe do stuff and jobs and so forth we're not crazy about, but there's an overall pursuit of happiness for all of us. That's my point. Okay, it's just the general point of that's why we do things in life, even indirectly, in that example, for the pursuit of happiness. Okay. Ironically, why does the bully? Why does the cruel person inflict bad, cruel behavior on other people? The same reason, if you think about it. You may think, what? Think about it. Let's break this down. They're seeking happiness as well. It's not a route to happiness that I tend to choose to pick, but they can do that. And why do they do that? First, they can, because we live in a free will universe and people can do whatever they choose to do. But why does the bully do it? It actually makes some logical sense. they choose to inflict pain and suffering on other people to make other people feel worse than they do. Because if you think about it, let's back up for a sec. I'll come back to that point in a second, but just think, step back. We'll just go through this step by step. If you've known any bullies in your life, are they really happy people? Are they really secure, self-confident beings? Whether it's male or female. I've been bullied by females, okay, at a job, at an educational institution, which I will not name. But if you go to my LinkedIn, you can figure it out, where I worked. And it was a bullying situation at work. Now, there's this commonality amongst bullies, that there's some insecurity in them, whether it's long-term insecurity, they're just generally an insecure person, or whether it's short-term. Because in my case, I think it was short-term, because you would look at the person, you think, they pretty much got their act together, but they were short-term insecure at times in terms of what I was asked to do at my job. And it made them so insecure that they chose to inflict pain and suffering on me at my job, from which they got happiness. Because they, why did the bully do that? The bullies do that because if they can depress you and other people around them, they feel better. So it's kind of like the ride, that term, some people talk about the boats in the water, and what happens when the tide rises or the tide falls, the boat goes up and down, right? Well, it's like the bully's in a boat, and the bully, what the bully wants to do is make everybody depressed around them so that their boat rises higher than everybody else's, and they feel superior. And in that falsely created superiority state that they've created in the relationship dynamic, they feel better, because they feel so miserable and insecure. Maybe they're not miserable, but many bullies are miserable, but they feel at least insecure, at least momentarily, and they will bully the other people in order to make themselves feel better. Look, I've done it. Just self-disclosure, driving in my car. I can think of instances where I'm not proud of, where I was driving in my car with my family, and we're on a long trip, and my blood sugar's getting low because when's the next rest area we can stop and get something to eat? That I'm sure many of you have been in that situation before, and your blood sugar gets low and you snap at the kid. And I snapped at the kids. Now, I wasn't consciously thinking, oh, I want to feel better, so I'm going to bully them and berate them and demean them, at that moment, and make them feel badly. But that's the underlying thing, okay? And so the bully is typically, in my case, when I was momentarily bullying for a split second, let's just say, I wasn't realizing that I was doing that. And I've done that in some of my relationships with women too, where I have demeaned them in a way that I didn't intentionally. So see, bullying is not always an intentional act. So don't get confused. Bullying sometimes is intentional. So okay, sometimes it's clearly intentional. But I have unintentionally bullied some women that I've been in my relations with, and I felt very contrite about it, and apologetic, and felt terrible about it. But at that moment when I did that, said a demeaning thing, oh wow, I was in a moment where I was feeling not so centered. So you can substitute the word centered for insecure or whatever, but at that moment I was not centered. And so in my language I'm using today in our bullying talk, I'm calling it insecurity, because if I'm not really centered, I'm a little bit insecure, okay? And then I demean somebody, all right? So that's a minor infraction of bullying. And then I apologized to the woman and I felt terrible and so forth and so on. And that's very real. I really did feel terrible. But I'm just saying, none of us are perfect, is what I'm saying, is that we're all subject to this. And so it's important to learn. It's important to be self-reflective and learn and be honest and candid with ourselves that we've all done this at times, okay? But the ones who do it as part of their personality, that it's ingrained in their personality to be a bully, those are the more extreme cases that I'm talking about, where they're really getting happiness out of inflicting that pain. And it really does juice them in a what I consider a weird way. Okay. So and it's because they're so unhappy and miserable inside themselves. Okay. So don't be fooled. So here's a little, the reminder to you is to not be fooled by the bully. Don't be fooled by the man or woman who's puffing their chest out, pounding their chest. I'm the smartest person. I have the highest IQ. I went to this school and that school, and and you went to this little state school and blah blah blah, and berating and name calling. I mean, there are adults who do this, not just kids. Some of you may think that, oh, well, that's childish behavior. It is childish behavior. But, I've been with 50, 60, 70-year-old people doing childish behavior. And I'm sure you've seen examples of this, on the world stage at times, but that's just a bully smokescreen, I call it. That's just puffing the chest out. It's a huge red flag. When you see that, the red flag should go up in your mind and go, whoa, this person, they need help. They really do. The bully needs help. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go out, and you or me, that we're out, going around saving everybody in the world who doesn't want to be saved, because bullies generally, the level of bullying I'm talking about, I'm not talking about the level of bullying for me when I was low blood sugar in the car with my kids example. I'm talking about the bullies who that's their personality type. It's very hard to get them to change. Everybody needs to change themselves, first of all. And it's hard to get the bully to see that they need to change if it's really ensconced in their personality that deeply. But it's a huge red flag. It's a sign of insecurity and unhappiness. And essentially, what is the bully's solution, as I said, to use some of the other language I introduced earlier, when they are, in that example, that analogy I was giving you, when they're raising their boat because they feel so depressed when they look around themselves, they feel insecure. When they want to raise their boat by lowering everybody else's boat around them, by making everybody else feel lesser than them, more unhappy, more miserable, depressed, more depressed than they feel, what are they essentially doing? To use that other language that I was introducing, it's the importance of being important, isn't it? It's their importance is more important than anything else. Making themselves important. I'm the important one in the family. I run the family. I'm the one in the company. I'm the blah, blah, blah. I'm the one in the country. I'm the one. That puffing out of the chest, that importance of being important is what I call that principle. My friend George and I some of you heard me talk about my buddy George, and we have these conversations. And George came up with this phrase. I said, that's a great phrase. The importance of being important. That's really that's the nutshell version of it. It distills down. Nutshell means it's the distilled down version of this whole thing. It's like the importance of being important supersedes, to use a phrase that I used to use, that I use less now, it trumps everything else. The importance of being important supersedes everything else. It's the bully's solution for being unhappy. Make him or herself more important than everybody else. It becomes the central life theme of the bully. And those of you who've lived with bullies, who've worked for bullies, who've been in a relationship, a boyfriend, girlfriend, who has bullied you, once they get a taste of that, they tend to do it more because it makes them happier. This is the irony that I started this conversation with you guys out a few minutes ago. They're also involved in the pursuit of happiness, and they start seeing that, wow, that makes me feel really good, and they do it more. They get, and then the ones who've been doing it for years get very, very adept at it, very skilled at bullying. So, but here's the thing, a reminder to each of you. We are all sovereign minds. So sometimes you've heard me use this in some of my other talks and lectures. What does that mean? We are independent, free-thinking minds. You could substitute the word soul, spirit, consciousness, awareness. When I say minds, I work across 48 countries so far, and I want to use language that's easily understood by everybody, especially those people in countries where, I'm speaking English because I don't speak their language, and English is their second, third language. So minds, but you can substitute the word soul, spirit, consciousness. We are independent minds. We are free will thinking minds. Free will means personal choice, right? We can make our choice to listen or not listen to the way the bully is treating us. Now, we may have to hear it if we're in a relationship, whether it's work or personal relationship, but there's a difference between hearing and listening. And I just started using this distinction in some of my classes. Hearing is like, we hear it. Obviously, you hear it, you got ears, you hear it. You hear the rant that the bully is going on, whatever. But do you have to assimilate it into yourself inside, deep inside? That's the listening part. Many of you have been in relationships, I'm sure, where you've been standing in the kitchen, whether it's your husband, wife, or children. It's usually a husband, not a wife. But but I want to be gender neutral here, gender balanced. But very often with kids, with teenagers. Anybody have any teenagers? And you say to them, I know you heard me. I know you heard me because you were standing in the kitchen with me when I asked you to take the trash out. Were you listening to me? You didn't listen to me. That's the distinction between hearing and listening. I can hear some of you laughing right now, right? We've all been in that situation. We know the person heard us. They were standing right there in front of us. They were awake. They were looking at us. Did they listen? That's the distinction I'm making when I say we are free will thinking minds. And if we're in a situation where we're being bullied, we can hear, but we don't have to listen. We can make that choice not to listen, meaning not be ill affected by it, is what I mean from a consciousness, from a soul consciousness standpoint. Yeah, we may be subjected to it, but we don't have to be ill affected by it, okay? Now, of course, just some obvious points. If you went up to the bully and said, you're a bully, the bully would go, usually the tipping, sometimes the schoolyard bully would go, yeah, so what, but most adults in a work situation or in a personal relationship situation would probably deny it. They would say, I'm not a bully. I'm the nicest person in the world. Look at how many charities that I've donated money to. Look at how many food, how many, how often I go to the food bank and I work at the homeless shelter and all this stuff. And they'll point to all this external stuff. That doesn't mean that they're not a bully, but that's a typical bully reaction, is to point out all the good deed doer stuff that they do. Meanwhile, what's their behavior? This is where I always say to you, this is like another teaching tip that I've introduced into my various classes at various times. We're not judging the bully or anybody. We shouldn't judge people in terms of what's their state of consciousness, what's their level of spirituality, all of that stuff. To me, that's a total waste of time, because I'm still trying to figure out myself. How can I figure out you or anybody else? It's like, no, that's like way too arrogant. A frame of mind to be like judging people in that way. But we should judge people's behavior. We absolutely judge people based on their behavior. How are they acting? How are they making me feel? And how are they making, observing them? How are they making other people in my family feel, or my workplace, or whatever? We judge people's behavior, because if we don't judge people and assess people based on their behavior, we're not learning in life. And then we're going to just get involved in another relationship with another bully. If we haven't learned and judged the bully's behavior based on their, how it's externally manifested and how that's internally affected us. So that kind of judgment, I think, is important. And it's very important as we go through life as eternal beings, to learn through life by judging external behavior, not internal states of being and consciousness and spirituality. That's a complete and utter waste of time. All right. But again, that red flag that we keep coming back to, the bully feels important. Look at how more important than I am. How much money did you donate to the foundations out there? Look at how many tens of millions or tens of thousands of dollars I donated. That kind of behavior is another red flag that we don't know if that person is gonna bully, but they have a tendency there. If they're that chest puffing person, chest beating, puff out the chest and chest beating type of person, those are seeds. All right. And so I'm also saying this to you, not only to recognize bullies externally, but to recognize within ourselves. As I said, I was self-disclosing earlier, Judy, when you're talking about myself and that I've done it myself. Well, these little instances, if we recognize, oh, I'm starting to feel a little important now, that is that more important than other people. That's a seed. You start to recognize it, you can nip it. Now, that's not the same as being not self-confident. I'm not promoting that you not be self-confident with yourself. But when you start to feel more important than other people, you start comparing yourselves to other people, and that, that person isn't as smart as I, and so on. We can have side conversations, and we can have little joking conversations about that. Everybody does that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about really internally judging yourself based on other people, comparing it to other people. That's a slippery slope. And I'm just suggesting that we may nip that in the bud, because that's a slippery slope towards us potentially acting a little bit in a bully way. Okay, that's all. But what about the bully? The illusion of this is that this is a temporary fix. That's the illusion as we externally can look at this concept of bullying. The bully's in the middle of this. The bully doesn't have that ability to step back and observe him or herself, but it's temporary. It's temporary because it's a temporary fix. Because what happens? Well, eventually, because the bully, the seed of this whole thing is the insecurity of the bully, they're going to start feeling insecure again, because everybody else is kind of getting used to the situation. Oh, that person's such a jerk, blah, 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 blah. And then so what happens is, so the environment around the bully starts to get more balanced, because life tends to seek balance, doesn't it? And so people start to get used to, they get acclimated to, the bully's such a jerk, man. He does this and this. Starts to become predictable, that bad behavior. Well, then the bully will just start to bully more and depress the people more. So that's the thing. That's the illusion. He tends to turn up the misery intensity, so to speak. And then really that's the tunnel that's the gateway to narcissism, isn't it? So the bully then becomes all about me. It's me only. It's all about me, and everybody else be damned. And that means his or her friends, his or her close work colleagues, his or her people who he relies on for his business or personal success. It does not matter. That now we're at the level of narcissism, because this is gradations. That's why I gave you myself as an example of being tired and hungry in the car on a long trip with the kids and so forth. But that's a easy bit of bullying, but there's a spectrum. It's not black and white. It's not you're not a bully and all of a sudden you're a bully. It's a spectrum. And now we're talking about the other end of the spectrum is narcissism. And this is, it's totally about me. And the bully only feels better when their feelings are improved, their sense of happiness is improved by total depression of other people around them. So what can we do about this? All right. First of all, before we talk about the victim, let's talk about the bully. And we can only really talk about the bully kind of briefly, because as I said, it has to come from within. Any change in any of us, whether it's you, me, anybody, or the bully in this case, it has to come from within each of us, right? We can't push change on other people. We can try to, but influence other people, but we can never force change on anybody because free will operates and the person has a choice to ignore us. So with the bully, yes, it has to come from within the bully, but what's the likelihood? The more narcissistic the person is, that means the more ensconced that bullying behavior is in the fabric of their personality, the less likely that they're going to be self-reflective and that they're going to want to make any change, because it works so well for them and they're so skilled at bullying, and they have so many people cowering. Oh, what do you want me to do, sir? I'll do whatever you want. That kind of people around them. They're good at collecting those types of people to make themselves feel better. It's tough to get somebody like that to change. That's like probably lifetimes, literally. I mean that seriously, for that person to finally see, because as you may have connected the dots already, what's going to make the bully change is once they finally see around them that they're creating more and more universes around them of incredibly unhappy people, and how what kind of world is that you want, mini world, that you want to live in as a human being, in this case the bully, but it takes a while for them to see that. So, but what's the ironic, how should we treat bullies? Like, for example, let's use a more an example that's more open to possible change. Let's say that there's a child at 5 years old who's bullying some other kids on the playground, at school, in kindergarten or first grade. So little kids, right? What's the solution? Well, the obvious solution, based on what we're talking about, is not the typical solution that most people do. Most teachers, most principals of the school, hey, you go to the principal's office and you're going to get punished. Most people, it's a punishment solution, and that does not work, right? Punishment does not change behavior. What the solution is to embrace the child or embrace the adult. Either way, but I think for most of us, we can get our minds more around this idea of embracing the child at the time, and that's the way, because giving the child more self-confidence, or the adult more self-confidence, that is the way to help them change. Now, for an adult, it may be a much longer road to change than a 5 or 6 year old. Okay, maybe quicker for a younger child, but that's how we should be dealing with them. That's the irony, is to give them more love and acceptance. It's not the knee jerk for most people is to punish them. And it doesn't change behavior. It just drives the bullying into more of being a bully. But let's talk about the victim. So what can the victim do? And I've laid out in my book here, I've laid out several steps here. So I got a 4-step process. And again, this is not exhaustive, and and there are many people out there who deal with bullying on a professional level who probably have a much more sophisticated step-by-step process and a more detailed step-by-step process. So I'm not here saying that they're wrong. I am more of a philosopher teacher type, and I'm teaching principles, okay? So I think the first thing to do is to recognize that the bullying is happening, all right? Is to recognize that the bullying is happening, and to recognize that the person is trying to make you miserable because he's feeling miserable within himself. That's why. So recognition, the first step. The second step, understanding. Understanding that he's trying to control your emotional state by trying to make you feel worse than he feels. That's his sole goal, all right? And then third, we talked about this principle earlier, the sovereignty of the mind. Realize that your mind is sovereign, and that, in other words, you have the free will to choose whatever you want to choose, and we're only psychologically controlled by others if we allow ourselves to be psychologically controlled by them. All right? Now, keyword psychologically controlled, okay? I'm not talking about physical incarceration or whatever, okay? So we're always free, independent thinkers. Can we be influenced by other people? Absolutely. Can the bully be influencing me when I was at work? Absolutely. But do they control me is the issue. Do they control me psychologically? No. Okay. So, so what affirmative actions can we take? One thing that I suggest is confusion. So confusion meaning what? It's confusing to the bully if you don't cower right off the bat. If you don't act in a fearful way to the bully, that is confusing to the bully, and that starts to neutralize his or her power over you, which is all they care about. That they're into power over you to make you feel depressed so that they feel better. All right. So confusion by not cowering right away is that starts to dissipate their power over you. Laughing, for example, laughing at them. Don't give them that control. The more self-control you exert, the more they become confused, and the more likely they're going to stop bullying you. And okay, might they go on and bully somebody else? Yes. You can't save the world here. Literally, you can't save the world, because only that person can save themselves from the bully by potentially acting similarly. But at least you have caused yourself not to be the victim of continued bullying then. All right. This example I use in here of James Bond, many of us have seen James Bond movies, but there always seems to be a scene in every James Bond movie where the bad guy, Mr. Who and Who, the bad guy who's trying to destroy the world or whatever, captures James Bond near the end of the movie, right? This is part of the trajectory of all the James Bond screenplays. And he captures him, and James Bond always seems to be in, how can he get out of this kind of situation? It's impossible, right? Hands tied, feet tied, whatever, everything. But somehow he tricks the bully because that's what the guy is. The other person, the bad deed doer, who's captured James Bond, is a bully. He's bullying James Bond. Obviously, this is a classic bully, right? You know, they don't hide how much pleasure they're getting out of inflicting pain on James Bond. Classic bullying, classic cruelty. And but somehow James Bond distracts him. You ever seen that happen? It does it all the time. He will distract him somehow, either verbally. I've seen him in some scenes laughing. He's incredible physical pain, James Bond, and laughing at the same time. Now that's not easy to do because he's being tortured and he's laughing, which is he's causing confusion, right? But what does that do? It gives James Bond a little bit of a what do they call that? It's like a little bit of a crack, a little opening, and then boom, he leverages that opening and he somehow gets out of the situation. And you've seen it in every James Bond movie, right? So that's the idea of confusion. And then, of course, the last thing is then separation from the bully. So James Bond gets out of the situation and the bully either gets, injured or never seems to get killed, right? It's always injured because I always got to come back again. And then James Bond has to, finally, get him incarcerated or killed or whatever. But in your case, in our real life cases, separation may be appropriate. In my case, separation job-wise, got a better job, with where people were not bullying me, or if you're in a relationship, divorce may be appropriate. Separation in some way, whether it's legal separation or physical separation from the person, whether it's maybe it's not a marital situation where it's a friendship or whatever, or social media, being bullied on social media. A lot of that happening these days, blocking people and separation. So that's the final step in the how to deal with the bully if you're being victimized by the bully, is separation. And that's it. Sayonara, see you later. Drawing a line, boundaries. Very important to know when and how to draw boundaries in our lives as we go through life eternally. That's how you get back control from those who may try to push their importance on you. That's how we deal with the bully who's trying to push their importance on you. That's how you get the control back. And so you've heard me say this in this series already, and some of you have heard me say this many times in my other classes, and I've been saying this for at least 2,000 years that I'm aware of, is take control of what you have control over and let go of the rest. So in this case, we can take control back from the bully in this situation. And those are the basic steps, okay? So open this up for questions. I'm going to take myself off of Spotlight here. Remove Spotlight. Okay, so questions. Anything, any comments, questions from folks? Let's see, I have a question here in the chat box. Let me read this. Feel free to take yourself off of mute also and ask so that the recording can pick it up and so forth. Yeah, that's true. The bully can target one person and seem to be friendly to other people. Absolutely. Some bullies get very adept at manipulating, let's just say, manipulating other people's behavior. And then also there's a whole, we don't need to get into this, but they can get very adept at gaslighting. So they'll gaslight you and act friendly to other people. And they're like, oh, I'm not bullying, Kelvin. What are you talking about? I don't bully. It's like, oh, look at how friendly I am with you. That's the example I gave before about, it's kind of analogous to the, well, look at how many foundations I give so much money to. I'm such a magnanimous person. And, I'm the least racist person. I am the most giving person in the world. And look at how much money I've donated, blah, blah, blah. And maybe they've donated the money and maybe they haven't. But even if they have donated it, That doesn't mean you're not a bully. And that, like this person is pointing out here, Janice is pointing out, this doesn't mean you're not bullying me. I don't care how friendly you are to other people. So there's another question here. Is inflicting pain on someone always to seek happiness? Can't they be pursuing the cruelty for pleasure only? Do they have to be thinking of happiness? They're not thinking of happiness. So here's the thing. They may be thinking of happiness. So that is like, that's sadistic, okay? So there are, like, I'm not getting into, again, I'm just kind of painting a picture of cruelty to give general principles about cruelty. I'm not, this is not a whole discussion about, well, where does cruelty then become sadism and so forth, because there is sadistic behavior as well. So this is not a class on abnormal psychology. These are just general principles, because I'm a practical guy. I'm trying to give people practical tips. Recognize this, recognize this, recognize this, do this, act this way. Remember, don't forget about this, about your ability, free will, and so forth, et cetera, et cetera. I'm doing this from a teaching standpoint that way, in a very quick, fairly quick, pragmatic way. But yeah, the bully can definitely bully for purely out of happiness, just for the pure pleasure, and that's what I think we call, sadism. So I'm not saying that they're even, and plus, bullies can bully and not be consciously aware that they're doing it for happiness reasons. They just feel better. It makes them feel better. That's why I use myself as a quick example. It's like, blowing off steam on your kids sometimes can feel better, make you feel better, Bullying can also be a cry for attention, like a child who wants attention from his parents is not getting it. Yes, and that's another reason. It's a great point, Christina. And that's another reason why I think that punishing should not be our knee-jerk reaction to bad behavior. We should look at the behavior, where's it coming from, and then react accordingly. And our knee-jerk should be to embrace the person. Now, we're talking about kids here, and we're talking about using our common sense. I'm not talking about the guy who's walking down the street wielding a knife. All right, that's stupid. I'm not going to go up and embrace the guy and say, oh, tell me about your childhood, and where did the love go wrong in your life? No, he's got a knife, and he's looking crazy, and he may be on crystal meth, and he's not behaving properly, and so forth and so on. That's when you dial 911, because you want to be safe, and you don't want him to inflict pain and suffering on somebody else, hurt somebody else. Okay, but that's not necessarily, that's you could call that bullying, but it's not really bullying in the way that I'm talking about bullying. But there are bullies who could act that crazy and not be on crystal meth too. So I'm just saying, use your common sense in every situation. But yes, I think that the knee-jerk should be looking at the situation, assessing it, and then acting appropriately, Christina. So, because it could be a cry for attention too. And, but the thing is, even in a bullying situations, Christina, I'm saying it is a cry for attention. And so that doesn't mean that you want to give everything to the person who's crying for attention, because that's exactly what the bully wants you to do. I want more media coverage, so I'm going to bully people because the media loves it when I bully people. Have you ever seen that in England? I mean, I know some of you are in the UK, so I know you've seen this in England. Have we ever seen that in the political stage in the United States? I know we have. Have you ever seen this in South America? Some of my clients in South America, in Colombia and so forth, absolutely. So is that the kind of behavior you want to reinforce? No, because that's exactly what the bully wants, is more media attention. So cry for attention is not necessarily, a knee jerk to, oh, I'm going to allow that. So you need to see, oh, it's a cry for attention, but what's underlying that cry for attention? Don't just feed it by giving that attention to the 5-year-old or to the 55-year-old or the 75-year-old, okay? I can't even speak because my bully lives above me. Oh, is 100+ years old. She's now above me where I am. Oh, yeah. She targeted me for 4 months, stalks me daily, hearing my floor. Yeah. Yeah. These types of people stalking me upstairs, falling, stomps on the floor. Yeah, old house, no insulation. Those situations, though, that's when you move. That's when the separation means they physically move, because, that you're not going to change that person. That's not, that type of bullying. I've been in a situation like that racially, to be honest, and it was in San Diego, California. So those of you who know California is not people think California is very liberal and open and all of this and flower power from the 60s and the 70s and all that. And to some extent that is true, but there are some very, very closed-minded, we'll just call it. I want to keep politics out of this, but very closed-minded areas of the state of California. And you get east of the Sierras, and you get sometimes, close to the border down there. And I experienced some racial bullying, we'll call it what it was. And it was in a similar situation to this person who's raising this in the chat box here. And this person lived, it was an upstairs, downstairs, it was an apartment complex. So we lived over and above each other. And it was similar to what you're talking about, And so in that case, I got, I got the apartment complex involved and so forth. And actually, God bless my brother-in-law, Jimmy, was visiting once, and this guy did something. This guy in the other apartment did something and said something. And my brother-in-law, Jimmy, who I say God bless him because he had a massive heart attack at 60 years old, and he died about 3 years ago or something like that. But Jimmy, who's a big guy, Jimmy was a middle linebacker, starting middle linebacker at the Boston University football team. So he's a big guy. Jimmy went downstairs and he verbally ripped the guy, let's just say, and the guy never bothered me again. But that was an example of what I'm talking about. I didn't ask Jimmy to do this, but an example of what I just described, what I would describe: recognition of the bully, understanding why they're doing it, and create confusion. Well, Jimmy went down there and created a lot of confusion in that guy's mind, and the bullying stopped. Let's see, how does cruelty to oneself come into this? I.e., staying in a bullying situation because that's all they can do and can't leave. Well, see, that's tough. So then we get into layers of, and I'm not a therapist, and there were some psychotherapists on here with us, on the call. And so I was going to defer to them, pass the punt to them with this question, but she's no longer on the call. In a bullying situation, you have to decide, weighing various factors, how long you can stay in that bullying situation. Do you need, is it first, is it physically? Are you physically being bullied, etc.? Well, then you need to take care of yourself and get out of that bullying situation if there's physical harm there. So there's all these gradations, right? Do you need to get the police involved? Do you need to get law enforcement involved? Do you need to get lawyers involved? There's all these different layers of this. So you got to go down the checklist. Is it emotional bullying only? Well, and I hate the word only, because emotional bullying, I say it's equally damaging to the person as physical bullying. It leaves arguably as deep scars, or maybe even deeper scars. I don't know. I don't want to compare there. It's just bullying is bullying, and it's scarring nevertheless. And and so emotional bullying, to me, in my world, I don't stand for it. I deal with it. I move on. I separate. I understand if there's children involved, if there's a marriage, and you're being bullied by the husband or the wife, either way, but it's usually the husband, unfortunately, in our male-dominated misogynistic cultures worldwide. Or if you're in a gay relationship and you're being bullied, it doesn't matter if it's male, male, female, female, it doesn't matter. Bullying is bullying. And you got to get out of that relationship, in my opinion. And yeah, and I think people will say, I've heard this before, well, but what about the children? We stay together for the children. And I just, I have a stiff upper lip. We had that phrase in the English speaking languages and in countries that I work in anyway, in America and the UK, the stiff upper lip, and I just stay in the relationship with my bullying husband because of my children. Well, what kind of example are you setting for your children that bullying is okay? And what kind of teaching is your husband doing to the children? Is he creating more mini bullies? Because they see that, well, mom, I love mom, and mom seems to put up with it, so maybe it's not as bad. Maybe bullying is not as bad as it, as the class I took in high school talked about bullying and not bullying, because they got all kinds of classes in elementary school and high school now, because there's been so much bullying going on in the world. So the kid comes home and says, well, they said this in the class at school, the bullying class, the anti-bullying class or whatever at school. But my mom puts up with it, so maybe it's not that bad. My dad does these terrible things to her, and she's still in the relationship after X number of years. And so it's an indirect way for you, if you're being bullied, are you training your children by allowing indirectly but your complicit behavior, you're allowing behavior, and you're allowing your husband to teach them how to be a bully. So, I mean, that comes, the cruelty oneself has to do with self-love here. And we need to have enough self-respect for ourselves and enough self-confidence and self-esteem and love for ourselves to make that tough decision to step out of that situation if we are in a situation, whether you have kids or not. I'm not saying, you just have to do this because of, to show the kids. You got to show yourself first. That's why you do it. You don't do it for the kids first. You do it for yourself first, because self-interest, those of you who've heard me talk about in my recent interview on Midnight FM, which is also on my YouTube channel, I talk about self-interest, and I've woven that into some of our conversations here in this Meet the Author series, because there's several essays on self-interest in my book. Self-interest is important. It's the same as self-love. Self-interest is not being selfish. That's a big mistake. I hear this all the time from people. Oh, I don't want to be selfish. I don't want to be selfish, so I can't just do this and this and this for myself. No, that's being self-interested and self-loving. You got to take care of yourself. Who's taking care of you besides you? Nobody. You got to take care of yourself. But being too self-interested, it's a spectrum. being too self-interested then becomes selfish. So cruelty to oneself is, in a nutshell, to me, it's not being self-loving enough. Then we become cruel to oneself. So it's a great expression that you kind of coined for me there, Christina. That's really what cruelty to oneself is non-self-loving enough. And it's never black and white. It's a gradation of self-love that we all have for ourselves, individually, within each of us ourselves. Somebody says here, I think my primary bully is an unhappy person, a young mother from Russia, but she acts with the neighbors like she is a shy and afraid of the world sort. And outside, she has not spoken to me since mid-March until Memorial Day, when she screamed at me, "Don't touch the car," as her husband was backing up a car inch by inch toward my stepdad, seated at a table with a friend of mine. Yeah, well, those kind of people, you got to draw the line with those people. And if they're backing a car up and they are and your stepdad is at risk of being injured, I don't care who they are, you draw the line there with that person. Do bullies ever get their comeuppance? The bullies get their comeuppance, comeuppance, Hazel, in the London. For us in the United States, she means by, are there consequences to their actions? Do they get punished for what they do? And the thing is, the short answer is the consequences to their actions are internal for them. Because the thing is, sure, I mean, a bully can get thrown in jail if they break the law. Absolutely. Are there consequences that way? Yes. Did this bully in the example I gave you get put in his place by my large, muscular brother-in-law, who was much bigger than this idiot who was slinging racial slurs at me? Yes. But internally is where the rubber meets the road. And because, as we said earlier, if you punish the bully, what does that do? You martyr the bully, what does that do? That makes them even more important. More important. What does that do? That makes them even feel happier, and you reinforce their bullying even more. So it's really not the knee jerk to punish the bully plays right into, if you understand the principles that we laid out today, step by step, it really reinforces the bullying behavior. That's the irony, is that the typical reaction that most people think is to punish the heck out of the bully. It doesn't change the bully. Now, I'm not talking about social mores here and social laws. I am not talking about that. That's also what I was referencing in my disclaimer at the beginning about not giving a free hall pass to the bully that I said right at the beginning of our discussion today. No, there are laws. And if they break the laws, they go to jail. All right? So forth. But behavioral change, if we're talking, because I'm a spiritual teacher and a teacher talking about changing behavior. So it's all internal. All right. We already know from hundreds and maybe thousands of social psychological studies that punishing people does not change their behavior. We already know that. We know that from the recidivism rate that exists throughout the world. I know what this recidivism, that's a tongue twister, rate in the United States is. It's about 64%. That means that recidivism means you lock somebody up, you punish them just by locking them up in prison or in jail, and then you let them out. How soon are they back in jail? 64% of the prisoners who are let out of the jail in the United States are back in jail within 6 months. Within 6 months, two-thirds of them, nearly two-thirds of them are back in jail again within 6 months. Longer than that, more of them are back in jail, okay? But within 6 months, that's how fast they're back in jail. And in Los Angeles County, I know this, the number, because I heard the Los Angeles County District Attorney give a lecture, and she talked about how punishment is not good enough. She's a more proactive, progressive district attorney, and she was trying to promote more programs to help people who got incarcerated, to help them improve their lives, and throwing them in jail. Her statistics, she just laid out a whole bunch of statistics like this, and I wrote them down. She said they don't improve their lives. They don't not become in our language today, they don't become a non-bully. They don't stop bullying. They become more of a bully if you punish them, you incarcerate them. So, and she said, in fact, in Los Angeles County, what'd she say? You know, it's even faster than that. In a certain segment of the population, they're back within 3 weeks. But anyway, the bottom line is punishment doesn't work. But that's what most people do with the bully. They just punish them. They think, oh, they got to be punished for their bad behavior. There got to be some consequence of them. Well, like I said, for the bully, the consequence that you can't see, Hazel, is actually more internal than you realize. They actually are damaging themselves. They're inflicting they're self-inflicting more wounds and more scarring tissue within themselves. I see that figuratively speaking, but emotionally scarring tissue within themselves by bullying. That's the reality, because they cannot get a fix. Like we said earlier in our discussion today, they cannot get that same high that they get, or feeling of happiness. Maybe high is too extreme a word, but they can't get that same level of satisfaction. And maybe happiness is too strong a word too, but the satisfaction, they can't get that level of satisfaction. That's what I mean by happiness. They can't get that, because that's what they're looking for, satisfaction. They can't get that same level of satisfaction without bullying the people more. To me, that internal internal conflict that is clearly going on within the bully, whether they are consciously aware of it, their physical body is taking a toll on their physical body chemically. It's chemically taking a physical toll on them. They are poisoning themselves psychologically, emotionally, and arguably, you could say chemically. I don't know if there's any studies been done on that. I'm conjecturing on that to some degree, but that would seem to make sense to me, right? That they're poisoning themselves. Another person who's a terrible bully is, with some religious leaders. Yeah. Some religious leaders, rabbis, ministers, on the, which talk was it? I gave a talk. It's on I was listening to it the other day because somebody else was making a comment about it. And so I replied to her comment on this talk on angels and fear. And I was talking about a minister who last summer was promoting fear, saying that he got this message from, I don't know if it was angel, or if he said, I think he even said, God spoke to him because he was a minister down in southern part of the United States. And and I didn't call him out, and I didn't name him, but one of my students sent me a video of this guy spouting all this stuff. And so I addressed it in my talk on angels and fear. That's also on my YouTube channel. You can check it out. But I talk about some of these people who are bullying using that type of line of thinking to bully people, which is also just not, you need to be able to screen and filter these people out and see them for who they are, okay? Yeah. Any other questions? Any other questions? Well, great to have everybody on today. I hope this was helpful. Feel free to reach back to me, as I said at the beginning of our session today. Shoot me an email, go on my website. You go to kelvinchin.org, or that's my more spiritual website. Or you can go to my book website, which is kelvinhenrychin.com. kelvinhenrychin.com, that is my middle name in it, is my book website. Either way, you can contact me through the contact page there. Anybody who's watching the recording of this around the world, feel free to reach out to me. As I said at the beginning, our next talk is going to be in the Meet the Author series, this series here, August 21st, Saturday, same time, 10 o'clock in the morning, Pacific time. We'll talk about spiritual insecurity, the meaning of life, and perfection. And those are three different concepts, and I'm going to talk about how they all interweave together. Spiritual insecurity, the meaning of life, and perfection. I'm going to talk about those three concepts, and talk about them in several of the 67 essays in this book. And I'm going to weave those concepts together in our next session together. And if you want to hear, if you want to get emails from me when the next session is, and reminders and so forth, and what the next topics are going to be down the road in this series, this is a free series. But just send me an email through one of my websites, and I'll add you to the email list. So that way you'll get the correct Zoom link and so forth. Just so you know, I teach several classes. So I have a Meet the Author series, I have an Afterlife series, and I have a meditation, ongoing meditation classes that I teach regularly. And so I have three different Zoom links. And so if you want the correct Zoom link, the most reliable way to get it is by being on my email list, because I make sure on the email that I send out, I got the right, got the right link on it. Okay, so great to see everybody. Thank you so much for your input and questions, and great to have folks from all around the world always here. We got the US, South Africa, and the UK on with us together, and somebody, Sean from Hawaii, on with us from the US, but from a much earlier time zone, Sean. So great to have you on early in your morning here with us today. Take care. We'll see you next time, and be safe and take care of yourself and all your loved ones. All right. See you later.
Thanks, Kel.
You're welcome. Take care. We'll see you, Si.